They say some houses keep secrets, but you want to know what really keeps secrets? A dog's nose and a floorboard. That dog just wouldn't quit, scratching, whining, always coming back to the same spot in that little pink bedroom, like he knew what the rest of us were too tired or too scared to remember. I'll tell you, I'd worked more than a few missing persons cases in my day, but nothing ever got under my skin like what happened that summer in Portland, Oregon, when everyone, except this one dog, had given up on little Izzy Rouse. It was a dry, heavy August, the kind where heat just sticks to your skin, and everything in those old suburban blocks felt washed out and faded, like no one really lived there anymore. I was in my cruiser, half listening to the police radio, when the call came in. Welfare check. Weird lights on in a house that should have been empty, the same address where Izzy had disappeared 9 years before. No suspects, no evidence, just a sad anniversary everyone tiptoed around. You know what I mean? I figured, what's one more pass for old time's sake? But as soon as I leashed up my partner, Dozer, he started pulling like we were on a bomb call. Nose low, tail high, not his usual half-interested pace. Front door locked. Side gate open. Backyard overgrown. I remember the moment I noticed the basement window cracked, screen pried loose, dust fresh. That little prickle on the back of my neck, the one you never say out loud. Got a possible entry, requesting backup. I radioed. Then I crouched, waiting, but Dozer was glued to that spot. And that's when I caught the scent, not rot, not mildew, but human, old sweat, fear, and hope, if you believe in that kind of thing. Backup came. We forced the door. House felt like a tomb, but Dozer was all business, pulling me past dusty furniture, up the stairs, down the hall to a bedroom door with a butterfly sticker. He went at the floor like it owed him money. Under the wardrobe, hollow-sounding boards, a seam you'd miss unless you were looking, or unless your partner happened to be born with 200 million scent receptors. We pried it up and found a crawl space, just deep enough for boxes. Boxes full of VHS tapes, all labeled Princess Room, all dated and numbered like someone kept track of every minute in that tiny room. Evidence team came in, taped the place off, but I just sat on the curb with Dozer, petting him, feeling the world tilt a little. That night at the station, we ran the tapes. Most were static, but one showed Izzy, pale and confused, in that pink bedroom, a man's voice off camera telling her to dance. I felt my stomach drop right out of my body, and I've seen more than my share of bad things. It wasn't just that she'd been missing, it was knowing she'd never really left. That house held her tighter than the whole city did. Next day, the house was crawling with people. Yellow tape, media vans, nosy neighbors peering from porches. I flashed my badge, stepped inside, and met Detective Morrison, gruff but decent, clipboard and rolled-up sleeves, the kind of guy who never wants to believe the worst but will do the job. Down in the basement, the forensic crew had found more than we bargained for. A tunnel, fairy lights strung overhead, pink walls, soundproofing, a little mattress, toys, cameras, even a locked door painted pink at the far end. That's when everything slowed down. Dozer barked and pawed at the door, and I couldn't wait for backup, you know? Sometimes you just go. I kicked the lock in, and there she was, Izzy, or what was left of her after all those years. Thin, shaking, clutching her knees, eyes big and wild. She didn't believe I was real at first, thought the world had ended. Her father had told her there'd been a war, that everyone else was dead. The kind of brainwashing you don't undo with a warm blanket. But when Dozer lay down in front of her, she reached out, stroked his fur, and whispered, "You're warm." That's when I knew we had her back, at least the part that still believed in kindness. The fallout, God, I can't even describe. Her mom, Elaine, rushed to the hospital, wrapped her in a hug so tight it looked like she'd never let go. Izzy asked if she was broken. Elaine just cried and said, "Never. You were perfect." In the coming days, as we processed tapes, questioned her father, and dug up names from across the country, it got darker. Turns out, he wasn't acting alone. The Family Sanctum Fellowship, they called themselves ordinary men, neighbors, even a substitute teacher, all passing tapes, moving kids around, thinking they'd never get caught. It was bigger than Portland, bigger than Oregon. Some moments stay with you forever. Like when Izzy asked if there'd be a next time, if she'd get to see the ocean, go to school, eat real food. Like watching her testify in court, straight-backed and trembling, but unflinching as the judge read out the charges: kidnapping, abuse, exploitation. Her father sat there, pale, empty, but calm, like the world didn't touch him. He was only brave when the lights were off, Elaine said, and I'll never forget that. The guilty verdict came fast. Dozer let out a low growl when they led Charles out in cuffs, and I'll admit, I felt a little satisfaction at that. Headlines called it one of the biggest busts in U.S. history, but all I cared about was faces, not numbers. Izzy started therapy, self-defense classes, walks with Dozer. She joined a writing group, even wrote a poem about cracks and scars, and not forgetting. We kept working. The case spread to Idaho, Utah, California, more hidden rooms, more kids. Sometimes, on nights when the world felt too dark, I'd sit with Dozer on the motel floor, tell him we weren't done, not yet. And he'd thump his tail, ready for the next day, the next hunt. The day they unveiled a plaque for Dozer outside the precinct, families gathered under the cherry trees, tears and laughter all mixed up. Izzy read her poem, strong voice ringing out, and I thought, maybe, just maybe, we'd done something good. So let me ask you, what would you do if your dog led you to a secret nobody else believed? Would you keep digging? Would you listen, even when it's easier to walk away? Drop your thoughts below, because stories like these, they're not just about monsters in the dark, they're about finding the light, and who you bring with you when you do. Stay safe, stay aware, and trust your instincts. You'd think a story like ours would end there, right? Rescue, trial, justice served, a few headlines, some kind of happy closure, everyone getting back to their lives. But life's not a movie, and the shadows these men left didn't just vanish because a judge banged a gavel. In the weeks and months after Izzy's rescue, I learned the truth. Healing isn't a finish line. It's a long road with switchbacks, potholes, and sometimes a couple of good dogs leading the way. The FBI's task force was in full swing. Missing kids, encrypted servers, cold case files warming up across 6 states. They wanted me and Dozer for the field, boots on the ground, following every scent, every buried clue. I'd always thought of myself as tough, but some nights, just watching Izzy, thin, haunted, curled up with a stuffed animal in the safe house, I wondered if tough was really what these kids needed. Maybe what they needed was someone who didn't look away. Let me back up a sec. Because the real story didn't just continue with me, it spun outward. News crews circled like vultures, some looking for tragedy, some for hope, and every so often, one would get close to the truth. There was a moment, 2 weeks after the verdict, when Izzy, for the first time, asked if she could go back to her old school. Elaine was terrified, afraid the world would eat her up all over again. But Izzy just looked out the window, held Dozer's paw, and said, I want to see if I can be normal. That hit me harder than any trial. Meanwhile, our task force kept turning over rocks, and what crawled out was uglier than any of us imagined. One lead sent us to a rundown ranch outside Boise. Yep, Leonard Price's place, the retired Marine with no kids and a whole lot of secrets. I remember the drive, pine forest rolling by, Dozer asleep in the back seat, Agent Kohler up front flipping through case files, both of us feeling the tension wound tight as piano wire. You ever feel that sense before something bad happens? Yeah. We hit the property at dawn, quiet as the grave, morning fog clinging to the barn. Dozer took off as soon as I opened the door, nose pressed to the dirt. The place reeked of ammonia, bleach, and a kind of fear that gets into your bones. Kitchen spotless, coffee mug still warm. Someone had just been there. Dozer led us to a trap door behind the pantry, a classic, right? And what we found down there was a nightmare with pink walls and a child's bed, a whole setup just like the one in Portland. Only this time, it was a boy 6 years old, on video, crying for his mom. I'll never get that sound out of my head. And then Price himself appeared at the bottom of the stairs, rifle in hand, ice cold as winter steel. You think I'm a monster? He spat. I saved them. He raised the gun, but Dozer was faster, lunged, took him down in a tumble of teeth and fury, and before the smoke even cleared, the evidence was ours. Another survivor, another chance for a child to get out. Back home, Izzy was fighting her own battles. She'd started therapy, but nightmares woke her nearly every night. Still, she tried. She wrote stories, some dark, some hopeful, walked Dozer in the park, even spoke at a group for survivors, her voice trembling but sure. Elaine and I would sit nearby, pretending not to listen, but always close enough if she needed to reach out. You see, healing isn't something you can do for someone else. You just make space and hold the line. You want a twist? Here's one for you. In the middle of all of that, another name came across my desk. Leah, 7 years old, missing from Utah, her case written off as a custody dispute. A single detail caught my eye. She loved dogs, and the day she vanished, neighbors heard barking, nothing more. I pushed for the warrant. We rolled out before dawn, and when we hit the bedroom wall with the sledgehammer, Dozer went straight for a hollow panel. Behind it, another hidden room. Another little girl, alive. Sometimes you get miracles. In court, the faces of the guilty blurred together. Men and women, teachers, plumbers, engineers, every kind of normal you could imagine. When the judge read out the sentences, there wasn't applause. Just a heavy, grateful silence, as if the whole city was finally letting out a breath it had been holding for years. Izzy came, stood in the back with Dozer, and for the first time, she didn't flinch when the verdict was read. So, what now? Well, Dozer got a medal, a plaque under the cherry trees at City Hall, and more treats than any dog could eat in a lifetime. Izzy's poem is still taped to my fridge. We grow from the cracks. We sing through the scars. We remember, even when the world forgets. Elaine teaches a class for parents of missing kids, and I'm still out here, answering calls, following trails, listening when no one else wants to. Sometimes I wonder how many secrets still sleep under someone's floorboards, how many dogs are scratching, how many stories are waiting for just one person to say, "I believe you." It's messy work, full of failure, heartbreak, and yes, sometimes victory. But I've learned that justice isn't always a verdict or a headline. Sometimes it's a child's laughter echoing down a hallway, or a mother's tears finally drying on her cheeks. So, let me throw it back to you. What would you do if justice meant not just catching monsters, but helping the ones they tried to break learn to live again? Would you have the patience? The grit? Would you follow the sin even when the world tells you to quit? Drop your stories and your thoughts below. Who knows? Maybe your voice is the one someone's been waiting to hear. And hey, hug your dog tonight. You never know what secrets they might help you uncover. Stay sharp, stay kind, and never stop listening for the truth.